Hi, welcome to Learn to Score. In this video, we are going to cover real numbers for class 10th. I hope you will like the video. Please subscribe to our channel for regular updates. And if you like the video, share it with your friends so that it can benefit them too. Thank you. Let us quickly recall real numbers. The numbers that are used to count objects are called natural numbers. For example, numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on are called natural numbers, right? When you group natural numbers along with 0, the set of numbers you have are called whole numbers. Whole numbers are, for example, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Right? Now, if you group whole numbers along with negative numbers such as -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -100, and so on, then what you have is called integers. These numbers are called integers. Please note this point. If you group integers along with ratio of integers, for example, 1 by 2, 3 by 4, minus 3 by 4, minus 1 by 2, minus 5 by 10, 8 by 10, 14 by 10, 14 by 100, 0.111, 0.065, and so on, then the kind of numbers you get are called rational numbers. The group of numbers having integers and ratio of integers together are called rational numbers. Please note this point. There are another set of numbers. Those numbers are called irrational numbers. For example, root 2, root 3, minus root 5, pi, etc. are called irrational numbers. The distinction between rational numbers and irrational numbers is fairly simple. Irrational numbers cannot be written as a ratio of integers, whereas rational numbers, any rational number you can take, it can be expressed as a ratio of integers. That is the whole idea. When you put together these two numbers, rational numbers and irrational numbers together, you call them as real number. I hope you understood. Let us learn about fundamental theorem of arithmetic now. Prior to that, let's see prime factorization of a number. Let us express number 18 as product of its prime factors. We know that 18 can be written as 2 times 9. Here 18 is a composite number, 2 is a prime number, and 9 is a composite number, right? Let me write 18 as product of 2 and 9. And 9 can be written as product of 3 and 3, right? As you see here, the numbers which are appearing in yellow color are the prime numbers, number 2 and number 3, whereas number 18 and number 9 are composite numbers, right? So now I can write 18 as product of prime numbers, or you can say that 18, you are writing it as product of its prime factors. That is 18 equal to 2 times 3 times 3. That can also be written as 2 times 3 square. Right? Now, let's express 210 as product of its prime factors. 210 can be written as 2 times 105, where 2 is a prime number and 105 is a composite number. Right? Now, let me write 105 as product of 3 and 35, where 3 is a prime number and 35 is a composite number. 35 can be written as product of two prime numbers that are 5 and 7. Now 210 can be written as product of its prime factors. The prime factors are 2, 3, 5 and 7. So 210 now can be written as 2 times 3 times 5 times 7, right? Please note this one. As you have seen, now we can understand fundamental theorem of arithmetic based on these examples. As you have seen, 210 was written as 2 times 3 times 5 times 7, right? Since we have started with number 2 as the divisor to begin with, you have gotten this order. Instead, what I do is I'll start with number 3 as the divisor. So 210 can be written as 3 times 70. If you do that way, then 210 can be written as 3 times 2 times 5 times 7, right? Instead, if I start with 5 as the divisor to begin with, then 210 can be written as 5 times 7 times 3 times 2. If you observe this, the prime factors involved are 2, 3, 5 and 7 only, but the order is changing, right? Irrespective of, or in other words, you can say that irrespective of the order, the prime factors are the same. This is the essence of fundamental theorem of arithmetic. It is stated as follows. Every composite number can be expressed as a product of primes, and the factorization is unique apart from the order in which the prime factors occur. In the case of 210, we have seen the composite number 210 was expressed as product of prime numbers 2, 3, 5 and 7, and the factorization is unique apart from the order in which the prime factors occur. The order was different, but the prime factors involved were the same, right? I hope you understood fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Let us learn about HCF now. Highest common factor, or HCF, of two or more numbers can be obtained from prime factorization method. Let's try to understand that now. HCF is defined as product of the smallest power of each common prime factors in the number. Let's try to understand this definition with help of an example. Let's find HCF of number 12 and number 18. 12 can be written as 2 times 6, where 2 is a prime number and 6 is a composite number. Now, the composite number 6 is further split and written as 2 times 3, where 2 and 3 are prime numbers. That's how you get prime factorization for a given number. So 12 now can be written as product of its prime factors, that is 2 times 2 times 3. That can also be written as 2 square times 3, right? Similarly, let's find prime factors for 18 now. 18 can be written as 2 times 9 and 9 can be written as 3 times 3. So 18 can be written as 2 times 3 times 3. That can also be written as 2 times 3 square. If you observe the definition of HCF, it is talking about two things. One is each common prime factors and other is smallest power. Let's find what are the common prime factors. 2 and 3 are the common prime factors, right? 12 was written as 2 square times 3 and 18 was written as 2 times 3 square, right? So we have to see the smallest powers now. Smallest power of 2 is 1. That is part of your 18, right? Similarly, the smallest power of 3 is part of your 12, number 12. So their powers are 1 and 1, right? So now HCF is defined as product of smallest power of each common prime factors. So common prime factors involved are 2 and 3 and their powers are 1 and 1. So HCF of 12 and 18 now can be written as 2 power 1 times 3 power 1, that is equal to 6. I hope you understood how to compute HCF of two numbers, right? Now let's understand about LCM. Least common multiple or LCM of two or more numbers can be obtained from prime factorization method. How? We are going to see that now. LCM is defined as product of the greatest power of each prime factors in the numbers. Let's try to understand this definition with help of the same example, that is 12 and 18. We have to find LCM of 12 and 18. We have seen that 12 can be written as 2 square times 3, right? And 18 can be written as 2 times 3 square. If you observe the definition of LCM, it says that it is defined as product of greatest power of each prime factor. So the prime factors involved here are 2 and 3. Highest power of 2 is 2. That is part of your number 12, right? And highest power of factor 3 is also 2. That is part of your number 18. So what we have to do now is, since we know powers of 2 and 3, those are 2 and 2 each other respectively. So what we do is we take product of 2 square and 3 square to get LCM. That is equal to 36. I hope you understood the definition of LCM now. Let us understand the relation between HCF and LCM now. LCM of number 12 and 18 is 36. That's what we have learned just now. And HCF of number 12 and 18 is 6, right? Let's take product of these two numbers. HCF times LCM equal to 6 times 36. That is equal to 216, right? If you take product of given numbers that are 12 and 18, that is also equal to 216. Based on this, what you can say is HCF times LCM equal to product of the given two numbers, right? Take a note of this formula. With the help of this formula, if you are given two numbers and HCF, then you can find LCM. If you're given two numbers and LCM, then you can quickly find HCF. Or if you're given LCM and HCF and one of the numbers, then you can find the second number, right? Let's take a look at few problems based on the concept we have learned just now. Consider the numbers 4 power n, where n is a natural number. Check whether there is any value of n for which 4 power n ends with the digit 0. How do we do that? Prior to doing that, let's try to understand the concept behind this. 20 can be written as 2 times 2 times 5, that is equal to 2 square times 5. 30 can be written as 2 times 3 times 5. 100 can be written as 2 square times 5 square. And 210 can be written as 2 times 3 times 5 times 7. If you observe all this, all the numbers we have given are 20, 30, 100, 210. All these have the end digit as 0, right? And another thing you have to point out here is that all these numbers have 5 as the prime factor. So the point to be noted here is that the number to end with digit 0, it has to have 5 as a prime factor. Please note this point. Now, 4 can be written as 2 times 2. That means 4 can be written as 2 square. It means 4 power n can be written as 2 square to the power of n. That can be written as 2 power 2n, right? So as you see here, 4 power n has only one prime factor, that is 2, right? You may recall that fundamental theorem of arithmetic says that prime factorization is unique for any composite number. If I say that 4 power n is a composite number, then its prime factorization is unique and the prime factor is only 2. It means number 5 is not a prime factor for 4 to the power of n. So based on the point we have learned just now, that is the number to end with digit 0, it has to have 5 as a prime factor, whereas 4 power n doesn't have 5 as prime factor, right? That's why you can say that for no value of n, 4 power n can end with digit 0. I hope you understood the problem. Let's go to the next problem, that is problem 2. Find the HCF and LCM of number 12, 15 and 21 using prime factorization method. 12 can be written as 2 square times 3 and 15 can be written as 3 times 5 and 21 can be written as 3 times 7, right? If you observe these three numbers and their prime factors, what you see is 3 is the only common prime factor, right? That is here, that is here, right? Other than that, you don't have any common prime factor. So since only one common prime factor exists for this combination of numbers, you say that HCF is 3, right? And if you observe, the all prime factors involved are number 2 here, number 3 that is here, and number 5 and number 7, right? So, and we know that LCM is product of highest powers of each prime factors in numbers, right? So highest power of 2 is 2, that is here, and rest of the numbers have got only 1 as the power, right? So now we can write LCM of these three numbers as 2 square times 3 times 5 times 7, that is equal to 420, right? Let us now learn about rational numbers and their decimal expansions. Any number that can be expressed as a ratio of two integers is called a rational number, right? For example, 1 by 3 is a rational number because 1 and 3 are integers, and this is a ratio of those two integers, right? 3 can also be written as 3 by 1. It means it is a rational number. 1 can be written as 1 by 1. That's why it is a rational number. And 0 is also a rational number because it can be written as 0 by 1 or 0 by 2 or 0 by 3 and so on, right? Minus 8 is a rational number because it can be written as minus 8 by 1. Half equal to 0.5 is also a rational number. 0.33333 and so on is a rational number because it can be expressed as a ratio of 1 and 3, that is 1 by 3, right? 1 by 20, that is equal to 0.05, that's why 0.05 is a rational number. And 0.090909 and so on is also a rational number because it can be expressed as a ratio of 1 and 11, right? 1 by 11 equal to 0.090909 and so on. As you have seen here, 0 is a rational number and every integer is a rational number, and the decimal representation of rational number is of two kinds. One is terminating. For example, half is equal to 0.5. The decimal expansion of half is terminating after one digit. 1 by 20 can be written as 0.05. The decimal expansion of 1 by 20 is terminating after two digits, right? When it comes to other class where the decimal expansions are non-terminating and repeating, for example, you have 1 by 3 that is equal to 0.3333 and so on, right? So it is not terminating and digit 3 is kept on repeating, right? That's what we meant. 1 by 11 can be written as 0.090909 and so on. Here if you see the digits 0 and 9 are the pair of those two digits is repeating, right? So that's why what we say is these decimal expansions are non-terminating and repeating. It means even if you write 1000 times, you can still write more number of times. That's the whole idea. Now, can we say that what numbers are terminating and what numbers are non-terminating but repeating just by looking at the numbers? Can we say that? That is the question we are going to ask now. A rational number x can be expressed as a ratio of two integers p and q. It means I can write x equal to p by q, right? Let us consider few rational numbers for which the decimal expansion terminates. 0.375, for this, after 3 digits, the decimal expansion terminates, right? 1.04, for which after 2 digits, the decimal expansion is terminating. 12.5, for which you have only one digit, 0.5. After that, the decimal expansion is terminating, right? Now let's express these numbers as ratio of integers in the form of p by q. 0.375 can be written as 375 divided by 1000, right? It can be written as 375 divided by 10 cube. 1.04 can be written as 104 divided by 100. That can be written as 104 divided by 10 square, right? 0.0875 can be written as 875 divided by 10,000, right? It can also be written as 875 divided by 10 power 4. Now let us express the numerators and denominators of these numbers as product of prime factors. For example, if I take 0.375 case, it can be written as 3 times 5 cube, right? And 10 cube can be written as 2 times 5 whole cube. It means 2 cube times 5 cube, right? So let me write now as 0.375 as 3 times 5 cube, that is 375 divided by 2 cube times 5 cube, right? I can now cancel this 5 cube with this 5 cube, so that I have is 3 divided by 2 cube, that is equal to 3 by 8, right? Similarly, if I do express the numerator and denominator of 1.104 and 10 square, what I get is 2 cube times 13 as 104 and 2 times 5 whole square as 10 square, right? Here I can cancel 2 square with this such that I get 2 times 13 divided by 5 square as the answer. When you simplify it, you get it as 26 divided by 25, right? Now let's take a look at the third case. 875 divided by 10 power 4. That can be written as 875 can be written as 5 cube times 7, and 10 power 4 can be written as 2 power 4 times 5 power 4. Now I can cancel this 5 cube with this such that I will have 5 in the denominator. So it can be written now as 7 divided by 2 power 4 times 5. That can be written as 7 divided by 80, right? If I say that I have written 0.375 as a ratio of two integers p and q that are 3 and 8, right? And I have written 1.04 as ratio of two integers 26 and 25. I have written 0.0875 as ratio of two integers 7 and 80. If you observe these numbers, 3 and 8 are co-primes. It means they have only 1 as the common factor, and 26 and 25 is another pair of co-primes, and 7 and 80 is also a pair of co-primes, right? It means your P and Q are co-prime numbers. So the denominator Q, if you observe, that is 8 or 25 or 80, what you are seeing is it is factored only into 2 in the case of 8. It is factored into only 5 in the case of 25. And it is factored into number 2 and number 5 in the case of 80, right? So the denominator Q is factored into only powers of 2 or only powers of 5 or powers of 2 and 5. That leads to a theorem that is stated as follows. Let x be a rational number whose decimal expansion terminates. In all these cases, the decimal expansion was terminating, right? Even you see 0.375, 1.04 or 0.0875, the decimal expansion terminates. And we have seen that P and Q are co-prime numbers in these cases, right? 3 and 8, 26 and 25, 7 and 80, all these are co-prime numbers. So the theorem states that let x be a rational number whose decimal expansion terminates. Then x can be expressed in the form of x equal to p by q, where p and q are co-prime. And the prime factorization of q is in the form of 2 power n times 5 power m, where n and m are non-negative integers. This is the theorem. If a number x has to be a rational number whose decimal expansion terminates, then it can be expressed as ratio of p and q, where p and q are co-primes, and the prime factorization of q is in the form of 2 power n 5 power m, where n and m are non-negative integers. This is called theorem 2 in this particular topic. The first theorem is fundamental theorem of arithmetic. Let's now take a look at another theorem. If we have a rational number in the form p by q, and prime factorization of q is in the form of 2 power n and 5 power m, where n and m are non-negative integers, then does p by q have a terminating decimal expansion or not? The question we have is, I have a rational number in the form of p by q, and prime factorization of q is in the form of 2 power n times 5 power m. Then can I say that p by q is going to have a terminating decimal expansion or not? That is the question. Let's understand that now. Let's consider few rational numbers. 25 by 2, 1 by 4000. 25, let's express these numbers in the decimal form first. 25 by 2, when you divide, you can write it as 12.5, right? 25 can be written as 5 square, and you can keep 2 as 2. Now what I'm doing is I'm getting 5 in the denominator, such that I'll be having in the denominator 2 power 1 and 5 power 1. Okay, since I have multiplied 5 in the denominator, I have multiplied 5 in the numerator also. That's why I have 5 cube in the numerator now, right? So this can be now written as 125, that is 5 cube, divided by 2 power 1 times 5 power 1, that is equal to 10. That can be now written as 12.5, right? Let's take a look at 1 by 4000. That can be written as 0.00025. This is straight division problem you can do and get it. Otherwise, I can write 1 by 4000 as 1 divided by 2 into 5, sorry, 2 power 5 times 5 cube. I can write it as, right? If you observe here, the 2 has got power 5 and 3 has got power 3. Sorry, 5 has got power 3, right? So let me get both the powers equal, that is equal to 5. To do that, what I do is I multiply the numerator with 5 square and multiply denominator also with the 5 square, such that you get 2 power 5 times 5 power 5 as the denominator. So now what I can do is 5 square is 25, and 2 power 5 and 5 power 5 can be written times 5 power 5 can be written as 10 power 5, so that I can write this as 0.00025, right? If you observe these, what you can say is, let x equal to p by q be a rational number, such that the prime factorization of q is in the form of 2 power n 5 power m, where n and m are non-negative integers. Then x has a decimal expansion which terminates. For example, what it says is, I have written 25 by 2, that is, let's say p by q, in the form of 5 cube divided by 2 power 1 and 5 power 1. The denominator q is prime factored into 2 power n 5 power n form, right? Where n equal to 1 and m equal to 1 in this case. And we have seen that the decimal expansion is of this particular number 25 by 2 is terminating, and that is equal to 12.5, right? The same is true with 1 by 4000. That is a rational number. So here in this case, it p equal to 1 and 2 equal to 4000, right? That I have expressed it as 5 square divided by 2 power 5 times 5 power 5. If you observe this, the denominator is expressed in the terms of 2 power n and 5 power m. That's why we could get the x in the decimal expansion, which is terminating, right? That's the whole idea of theorem 3. I hope you understood this concept. Let's learn about non-terminating and recurring decimals now, and a theorem on that. Consider a few rational numbers whose decimal expansions are non-terminating and recurring. 1 by 3, that can be written as 0.333 and so on. Since this digit 3 is repeating, I write it as 0.3 over bar. The over bar here on this 3 indicates that digit 3 is repeating digit. Similarly, 1 by 7 can be written as 0.142857, 142857. If you observe, these 6 digits 142857 are repeating, right? That's why 1 by 7 can be written as 0.142857 with over bar over all those digits, right? 2 by 9 can be written as 0.222 and so on. In this case, since digit 2 is repeating, I write it as 0.2 and I have 2 as over bar here, right? If you observe the denominators, number 3, number 7 and number 9, they are not in the form of 2 power n times 5 power m, right? And we have seen that all these decimal expansions are repeating and non-terminating, right? So we can now write the theorem on this. It says that let x equal to p by q be a rational number such that prime factorization of q is not of the form 2 power m, 2 power n, 5 power m, where n and m are non-negative integers. Then x has a non-terminating and repeating decimal expansion. If prime factorization of q, that is denominator, is not in the form of 2 power n, 5 power m, then the rational number x is going to have non-terminating and repeating decimal expansion. I hope you understood this. Let's take a look at few problems based on this concept. Without actual division, state whether 16 by 165, 25 by 32 and 41 by 75 are terminating or not. We have just seen the theorem. 16 by 125 can be written as 16 divided by 5 cube, right? So what I'm going to do now, since the denominator has got 5 cube, I can simply say that 16 by 125 is going to have a terminating decimal expansion. If you want to prove that, 16 by 125 can be written as 2 power 4 divided by 5 cube, right? I want to have 2 power 3 in the denominator also. For that, what I do is I multiply with 2 cube on both numerator and denominator. When I do that, I can write it as 2 power 7 for the numerator and 10 cube for the denominator. That is going to be 128 by 1000, that is equal to 0.128. So you have seen, when you have 5 power n or 5 power m in the denominator, you have gotten a terminating decimal expansion for the number 16 divided by 125, right? Let's now go to 25 by 32. 25 by 32 can be written as 25 by 2 power 5. Since 2 power 5 is there in the denominator, I'll simply say that 25 by 32 is a terminating decimal expansion, is a terminating decimal. If you want to prove 25 by 32 can be written as 5 square divided by 2 power 5, I want to have 5 power 5 in the denominator also. So what I'm doing is I'm multiplying both numerator and denominator with 5 power 5. When I do that, I'll have 5 power 7 in the numerator and 10 power 5 in the denominator. When I simplify it, I get answer as 0.7817125. It means when I had 2 power 5 in the denominator or 2 power n in the denominator, I have a decimal expansion which is terminating, right? Let's take a look at the third case, that is 41 by 175. If you see here, in the denominator, you have 5 as one of the prime factors, but 3 also is there. As per this particular theorem, you cannot, you have to have 2 power n and 5 power m, right? You want to have 2 power n and 5 power m, whereas here you have 3. That's why we simply say that 41 divided by 75 is a non-terminating repeating decimal. If you want to prove that, you simply calculate 41 by 75, that is 0.54666 and so on. That can be written as 0.546 with 4 bar on 6, since 6 is the digit which is repeating, right? I hope you understood this concept. Let's go to the next problem. Write decimal expansion of rational numbers 35 by 50 and 21 by 25 without actual division. Let me write 35 by 50 as 7 times 5 divided by 2 times 5 times 5, right? If I cross 1 5 here and 1 5 here, I can write it as 7 divided by 2 times 5, right? It means 7 divided by 10, that is equal to 0.7. Let's do this for 21 by 25 now. 21 can be written as 3 times 7 and 25 can be written as 5 times 5, right? So this can be written now as 3 times 7 divided by 5 square. I want to have 2 square in the denominator along with 5 square. So what I do is I'll multiply the numerator and denominator with 2 square. When I do that, I'm getting 2 square in the numerator and denominator. The denominator is going to be 10 square and the numerator is going to be 84. So it means it is 84 by 100, that is 0.84, right? I hope you understood the problem. Let us learn about irrational numbers now. A real number is called irrational if it cannot be written in the form of p by q, where p and q are integers and q not equal to 0. If you cannot write a real number in the form of p by q, where p and q are integers, then that real number is called irrational number. Please take a note of this. For example, root 2, root 3, root 5, root 7, pi, etc. are irrational numbers. If you observe, root 2 can be written as 1.4142135 and so on. Root 3 can be written as 1.7320080756889 and so on. Pi can be written as 3.14159265358979 and so on. When you observe these, what you can say is decimal expansion of irrational numbers is non-terminating and non-repeating. If you observe, for the rational numbers we have seen, there are two kinds of decimal expansions, terminating and non-terminating. Even in the case of non-terminating, we have repeating digits, right? When it comes to irrational numbers, these decimal expansions are non-terminating and non-repeating. It means you don't find a repeating set of digits even after writing, 1,000 digits, maybe 10,000 digits, million digits. It is not going to end like that. That is the whole idea of irrational. Let's prove that root 2 is an irrational number. Prior to doing this, I would like you to understand some concept. Let p be a prime number. If p divides a square, then p divides a. This is a statement. Let's try to understand this statement now. Let a be any positive integer. A is a positive integer. Prime factorization of a can be written as, let's say, p1 times, p2 times, p3 times, p4 times, and so on up to pn, right? Here, as you see, P1, P2, P3, P4 may or may not be distinct. We are not saying that they are distinct. For example, let's say 8 is 2 cube, right? We have written it as 2 times 2 times 2. In that case, prime factor P1, P2, P3 is equal to 2, and that's why they are not distinct. So we are not saying anything about whether they are distinct or not. A can be written as product of these prime factors P1, P2, P3, P4 and so on up to Pn. It means A square can be written as A times A. It means I can write it as P1, P2, P3, P4 and so on up to Pn times P1, P2, P3, P4 and so on up to Pn, right? So when you simplify this, I can write it as A square equal to P1 square times P2 square times P3 square times P4 square and so on up to Pn square, right? We said that in the early statement, P divides A square, right? If P divides A square, it means P is going to be one of the prime factors. The reason is that P is a prime number. We said that. That's why when I say that P divides A square, P is going to be one of the prime factors. Please take a note of that. One of the prime factors of A square, right? We have fundamental theorem of arithmetic. It says that factorization of a composite number is unique, right? If A square is a composite number, its factorization is unique. It means P is one of the prime factors, right? When you take this into consideration, fundamental theorem of arithmetic into consideration, then I can say that P1, P2, P3, P4 and Pn are prime factors of A square, right? If that is the case, and P is going to be one of P1, P2, P3, P4 and so on up to Pn. It can be P1, it can be P2, it can be P3 or anything, right? Since A can be written as P1 times P2 times P3 times P4 up to Pn, we can now say that P divides A. What happened, if you observe, we said that P is one of the prime factors of A square, right? And as per fundamental theorem of arithmetic, we said that A square, prime factors of A square are P1, P2, P3, P4 and so on up to Pn, right? Since we said that P divides A square here, P, I'm now, as per fundamental theorem of arithmetic, I'm saying that P is one of these prime factors, right? And we already said that A is equal to P1 times P2 times P3 times P4 and so on. And we already said that P is one of these. It means automatically P is going to divide A. So the point we have to note here is if P is a prime number and P divides A square, then automatically P divides A. This is what we have to remember. Let's go back to the previous problem. We prove this problem by proof by contradiction method. It means since we are asked to prove that root 2 is an irrational number, we are going to say that root 2 is a rational number. This is the proof by contradiction method. We are contradicting the statement to be proved. Since I said that root 2 is a rational number, I can express it as ratio of two integers, r and s, right? Root 2 equal to r by s. If I say that r and s have a common factor other than 1, then I can divide r by s, r and s of this fraction with that common factor such that I can write it as a by b. right? If I divide R and S with a common factor, then I'm saying that R by S becomes A by B. Since there is no common factor in between A and B apart from 1, I can say that A and B are co-prime numbers, right? Now, let me write root 2 equal to A by B. It can be rearranged and written as root 2 times B equal to A, right? Let me apply square on both the sides so that I can write it as 2B square equal to A square. Let's rearrange this and write it as B square equal to A square by 2. When I can write B square equal to A square by 2, I can say that 2 divides A square, right? Now you can recall the previous statement. Let P be a prime number. If P divides A square, then P divides A. So 2 is a prime number. Since 2 divides A square, I can say that 2 divides A also, right? So now I can say that A can be written as 2C, where C is some integer, right? We have seen that 2B square equal to A square already, right here. Let's substitute A equal to 2C into this equation. When you do that, you get 2B square equal to 4C square, right? Let me simplify it such that it can be written as B square equal to 2C square. When I rearrange it, I can write it as C square equal to B square by 2. It means 2 divides B square, right? Now, as per this particular statement, I can say that 2 divides B also. When I club this particular statement and this particular statement together, I can say that 2 divides A and B also, right? This is contradicting with A and B are co-prime numbers. When I say A and B are co-prime numbers, the common factor is only 1, right? Whereas here, as per this statement, the common factor is 2 also, right? So that's why it is contradicting with the fact that A and B are co-prime numbers. This contradiction happens for the reason that we have assumed that root 2 is a rational number, which is incorrect. That's why what we say is root 2 is an irrational number. So that is how we prove that root 2 is an irrational number. We start with assumption that root 2 is a rational number, and when you apply this particular statement and a few concepts, then you end up with some contradicting statement like this. When you have such contradicting statement, the idea is that whatever assumption you made is incorrect. Hence, we can say that root 2 is an irrational number. Similar way, you can do this for root 3, root 5, root 7, or any of the irrational number for that matter. Let's take a look at another example. Show that 5 minus root 3 is an irrational number. We know that root 3 is an irrational number already. Now we are asked to show that 5 minus root 3 is an irrational number. Let's assume that 5 minus root 3 is a rational number. This also we want to prove by proof by contradiction method. That's why we say that 5 minus root 3 is a rational number. It means I can find two co-prime numbers A and B such that 5 minus root 3 can be written as 5 minus root 3 equal to A by B. Let me rearrange this equation such that I can write root 3 equal to 5 minus A by B. That can be simplified and written as root 3 equal to 5B minus A by B, right? We have seen that A and B are integers and co-prime numbers, right? So if A and B are integers, then 5B minus A is going to be integer and B itself is an integer. So their ratio is also going to be a rational number, right? Because the ratio we have of two integers is a rational number. It means 5b minus a divided by b is a rational number. Hence, root 3 is a rational number. Whereas we know that root 3 is not a rational number, right? It is an irrational number. So it is contradicting with the whole idea of root 3 is an irrational number, right? This contradiction happens because whatever assumption we made is wrong or incorrect. That's why we conclude that 5 minus root 3 is an irrational number. I hope you understood this concept. Let's learn about logarithms now. Prior to that, let's quickly recall concepts based on exponents. 81 can be written as 3 power 4, right? In 3 power 4, 3 is called base and 4 is called exponent. Please note this point. So we can say that 81 is 4th power of 3. Writing a number in the form of base raised to a power is called exponentiation. Please note this point. 8 can be written as 2 cube. In this particular case, 2 is base and 3 is the exponent, right? 4 can be written as 2 square, right? If I multiply 2 with 4, we know that that is equal to 8 and that can be written as 2 cube. Please note this point. 2 times 4 can be written as 2 power 1 times 2 power 2, right? And law of exponent says that when you have a power m times a power n, that can be written as a power m plus n. If that is taken into consideration, then I can write 2 power 1 times 2 power 2 as 2 power 1 plus 2, that is equal to 2 power 3. Right? This is how you can make use of law of exponents to simplify certain expressions, mathematical expressions. 27 times 81 can be written as 3 cube times 3 power 4. 27 is 3 cube and 81 is 3 power 4, right? When you apply the law of exponents, that is a power m times a power n equal to a power m plus n, you can say that this is equal to 3 power 3 plus 4, that is equal to 3 power 7, right? What you have observed is, when you use this law of exponents, you are converting the multiplication problems into addition of powers problem, right? Now let's take a look at this problem. 81 divided by 27. 81 can be written as 3 power 4 and 27 can be written as 3 cube. When you simplify it, you get answer as 3, right? If you make use of law of exponents, this is second law of exponents, that is a power m divided by a power n can be written as a power m minus n. It means I can write 3 power 4 divided by 3 power 3 as 3 power 4 minus 3, that is equal to 3. What you must have observed here is the division problem now becomes a subtraction of powers problem, right? Let's now understand about expressing exponents as logarithms. 10,000 can be written as 10 power 4. Here, 10 is the base and 4 is the exponent, right? We say that 10,000 is expressed as 10 raised to power 4, right? That process is called exponentiation. That's what we have learned just now. One can express 10,000 in a different form also. That is called logarithm. That's what we are going to learn now. Log of base 10, log 10,000 of base 10 equal to 4. This is how we express this relation. 10,000 equal to 10 power 4 can be written as log 10,000 of base 10 equal to 4. This is read as log of 10,000 to the base 10 is equal to 4. Here, the 10 is base, right? 64 can be written as 8 square. We know that, right? When you want to convert this into logarithm form, what happens is this 8, the base here becomes base for the logarithm here. Okay, and this 2 goes here. Now you read it as log of 64 to the base 8 equal to 2. Log of 64 to the base 8 is equal to 2. We know that 64 can be expressed as 4 cube, right? If you want to convert this into logarithmic form, then this 4, which is base, becomes base of logarithm here, and the exponent here goes as the outcome. So it can be read as log of 64 to the base 4 is equal to 3. We know that 64 can also be written as 2 power 8, right? When you write it into logarithmic form, it becomes log of 64 to the base 2. You see this base and this base is same. And then 8 goes here, right? This is read as log of 64 to the base 2 is equal to 8. What you must have understood is when I have x equal to a power n as shown here, a is base and n is exponent, right? When you convert this into logarithmic form, you write it as log of x to the base a equal to n. I hope you understood this. Here a and x are positive numbers and a should not be equal to 1. Please take a note of this particular point. Let's take a look at few problems. Problem number 1. Write the exponential form for the following. Log of 100 to the base 10 equal to 2. We want to write it in terms of exponents, exponential form. So you see here, I'm saying base equal to 10, right? So let's write now 100 as 10 square. If you see here, this goes as power and this is your base, right? So 10 square equal to 100 is the exponential form, or 100 equal to 10 square is the exponential. So log 25 of base 5 is equal to 2. In this case, we said that base equal to 5. So when you convert this to exponential form, you will be writing this as 5 square equal to 25, right? This base is going base even in the exponential form, and this outcome is going as power. Okay, I hope you understood this, right? Now let's see log 2 of base 2 equal to 1, right? Here base is 2. So when you write it, the 1 is going to be the power. So 2 power 1 equal to 2 is the answer. Log 10 of base 10 equal to 1. This is going to be 10 power 1 equal to 10. So when you see this, when I have a power 1 that is equal to a, I can write it in the logarithmic form, that is log of a to the base a equal to 1. Same is happening here, right? Log 10 base 10 equal to 1 and log 2 base 2 equal to also 1. It means log a base a equal to 1. I hope you understood this concept. Let's go to the next problem, that is problem number 2. Determine the value of following logarithms. Log 9 of base 3 equal to what is the question. Let me write it as log 9 of base 3 equal to x, right? Here base 3 goes here as the base and then x becomes the power, right? Now let me write 9 as 3 power x. So I can write 9 as 3 square, right? Since base of this side is equal to base of this side, I can just say that the powers are equal. Here the powers are 2 and x. So 2 is going to be equal to x. So we got the value of x that is equal to 2, right? It means log 9 of base 3 equal to 2. Log 2 of base 8 is what is the question? I'm writing it as y, and this base, when I rearrange it, this base goes as base for y and y becomes power. When you rearrange it, you will be writing 2 equal to 8 power y, right? So I know that 2 can be written as 2 cube. So 8 can be written as 2 cube. So 8 power y can be written as 2 cube whole power y, that can be written as 2 power 3y, right? Now, when you compare the bases, I can write 2 as 2 power 1 and 8 power y as 2 power 3y. When I compare the bases are same, that is 2. That's why the powers are going to be equal. So I have 1 equal to 3y. It means y equal to 1 by 3, right? So the answer is going to be 1 by 3 here. Log 2 of base 8 equal to 1 by 3. Let's go to the next problem. Log a of base a is what? Let me write it as log a of base a equal to y. When I rearrange it, I can write it as a equal to a power y, right? I can write a as a power 1. So when I equate the powers, I'm going to get 1 equal to y, right? It means log a of base a equal to, right? Let's go to the next problem, that is log root c of base c is what? Let me equate it to z. When I rearrange, what will happen is this c becomes base for base and z becomes power, right? So when you do that, you can write it as root c equal to c power z. As you see here, root c can be written as c power half. Now when you compare the bases c and c, since they are same, you can equate the powers, and that's why you get z equal to half. It means log root c of base c is 1 by 2, right? Let's go to the next problem. Log 1 of base 7 is what? When you rearrange, you can write it as 1 equal to 7 power y. I can write 1 as 7 power 0 also, right? I can write it as a power 0. A can be any number. So when you equate the powers, you say that y equal to 0. It means log 1 of base 7 is 0. I hope you understood the concept. Let us learn about laws of logarithms now. Let's say that x equal to a power n and y equal to a power m are given, where a is greater than 0 and a is not equal to 1. We know that x equal to a power n can be written as log of x to the base a equal to n, right? That's what we have written just now. Y equal to a power m can be written as log of y to the base a equal to m, right? We know the first law of exponents is given as a to the power n times a to the power m equal to a to the power of n plus m, right? We have seen x equal to a power n and y equal to a power m as given here. When you take product of that, x times y is going to be a power n times a power m, that is equal to a power n plus m as per the first law of exponents, right? It means xy equal to a power n plus m. When you apply logarithm to this, you can write it as log of xy to the base a equal to n plus m, right? We have earlier said that log of x to the base a equal to n and log of y to the base a equal to m, right? If you substitute those two onto right hand side of this particular equation, then you can write it as log of x to the base a plus log of y to the base a, right? This is what is called the first law. Log of xy to the base a can now be written as log of x to the base a plus log of y to the base a. Please take a note of this first law. Let's take a look at the next uh, law, that is second law of logarithms. Let's say that x equal to a power n and y equal to a power m. We have just seen that x equal to a power n can be written as log of x to the base a equal to n. Similarly, y equal to a power m can be written as log of y to the base a equal to m, right? So second law of exponents is saying that a power n divided by a power m equal to a power n minus m, right? As per this, if I write x by y, that is equal to a power n divided by a power m, that is equal to a power n minus m, right? So now I can write it as x by y equal to a power n minus m. If I apply log on this, then it can be written as log of x by y to the base a equal to n minus m. You have already seen log of x to the base a equal to n and log of y to the base a equal to m. Let's substitute these two into the previous equation such that you can arrive at the second law of logarithms, that is log of x by y to the base a equal to log of x to the base a minus log of y to the base a. Please take a note of this law. Let's now go to the third law. X equal to a power n can be written as log of x to the base a equal to n, right? And if you have x power m, then that can be written as a power n to the power m, right? When you rearrange it, you can write it as a power nm, right? Let's take log on this. Log of x power m to the base a is now going to be equal to nm, right? Earlier, we said that log of x to the base a equal to n. Means if I substitute this particular expression for n here, then what I get is log of x to the base a times m, right? So let me write it as a single equation, that is called third law. Log of x power m to the base a equal to m times log of x to the base a. I hope you understood this. Let us take a look at few problems now. Expand log 15 is given. 15 can be written as 5 times 3, right? So log 15 can be now written as log of 5 times 3. Let's quickly recall the first law. It says that log of xy equal to log x plus log y, right? The base is a for all these logarithms. So now, as per this, I can write it as log 5 plus log 3, right? The base is same here. I'm not noting that it can be base a, base 2, base 3, doesn't matter. So log 15 now can be written as log 5 plus log 3. That's what is the answer. Let's take a look at another problem, that is problem number 2. Expand log of 343 divided by 125. Let's quickly recall the second law of logarithms, that is log of x by y equal to log x minus log y, right? As per this, I can write the given problem as log 343 minus log 125, right? 343 can be written as 7 cube and 125 can be written as 5 cube, right? Let's substitute these into the previous expression so that I can write it as log 343 equal to log of 7 cube minus log 125 equal to log of 5 cube, right? Let's quickly recall the third law. It says that log of x power m equal to m log x, right? If you apply this for log of 7 cube, that becomes 3 log 7, right? Similarly, log of 5 cube is going to be equal to 3 log 5. So let's write that now. 3 log 7 minus 3 log 5. So I can take 3 as the common factor out. When I do that, I can write it as 3 times log 7 minus log 5. So to answer the question, log of 343 divided by log 125 equal to 3 times log 7 minus log 5. I hope you understood this problem. Let's take a look at another problem, that is problem number 3. Write 2 log 3 plus 3 log 5 plus minus 5 log 2 as single logarithm. As per the third law, if I have log x power m, it becomes m log x, right? Instead, if I have something like m log x, then it becomes log x power m, right? That's what is going to happen for these. Here, if you observe, the 2 here you see is like m, and 3 here is like m, and 5 here is like m. So let's rearrange these terms now such that I can write 2 log 3 as log 3 square and 3 log 5 as log 5 cube and 5 log 2 as log 2 power 5, right? Now, if you see these two expressions, these two terms have got plus. It means we can apply the first law for these two, right? Prior to that, I can write it as log 3 square equal to log 9 and log 5 cube equal to log 125 and log 2 power 5 equal to log 32, right? So now let me apply the first law to these two terms. When I do that, I can write it as log of 9 times 125, and I am keeping the third term as is, right? This can be now written as log of 1125 minus log 32. Now, if you observe these two, I have a minus sign here, right? It means I can apply the second law. As per this, I can write log of 1125 minus log 32 as log of 1125 divided by 32, right? This is what we are looking for, right? So to answer the question, we can write now as 2 log 3 plus 3 log 5 minus 5 log 2 equal to log of 1125 divided by 32. I hope you understood this problem. I hope you like the video. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel Learn to Score. Thank you.